Hi, and welcome back to Glassboxed, writing automated cucumber tests. Today we're going to have a look at using Maven to set up a brand new cucumber framework from scratch. We will look at building a cucumber framework from scratch using Maven, how we can use Maven to help manage various aspects of our framework, and using Maven to run our tests. So first things first, a quick overview of what Maven is. So Maven is what's known as a build tool. It's used to effectively not just help manage your project, but also build various things for your project. So for instance, you can help it to build applications, you can use it to run only your tests on your applications. It's effectively, on a really abstract level, a task runner for your project. You can do various other things as well, such as help manage the libraries for your project, run specific tasks based on maybe filterings, and so on. I'm not going to dive into the technicalities of Maven for this particular video anyway. The focus here is just to create a framework using Maven as the backbone tool. So let's begin by creating a brand new Maven project. And to do this, you go to File, New, Project, and then search for Maven, and then select Maven Project. Click Next, Next, Next. And here, what we're going to do is we're going to give, or rather we're going to supply some information for our project. So the first thing we need to do is provide it a group ID, which is effectively just the ID for the project. So I'm just going to give it com.cucumber. The artifact ID is, on an abstract level, almost the name of your project. So this would be the name you would see appear under the package explorer. So again, give it a sensible name. So I'm going to call it Maven Cucumber Prototype, and then give it a package. So I'm going to call it package.cucumber.Maven Cucumber Prototype, and then click Finish and open it up. So really quickly, what's actually happened? So when we create a Maven project, it actually does a little bit of house cleaning for us. It creates various directories, but more importantly, it creates this particular XML file called the POM file. So let's open that up, and let's just navigate to the pom.xml tab. So what is the POM file? Well, the POM file is effectively the backbone of your project. It's the configuration file, if you like, for Maven that is used to do various different things. For this particular video, we're only going to concentrate on what's called the dependencies. The dependencies are effectively the jars that we will need to use in order to write and run various cucumber tests. So the first thing we'll do is upgrade our JUnit to 4.11. We also need the cucumber jars, and to do that we just will create a new dependency tag, and in here we are going to need a group. We're also going to need an artifact ID, a version tag, and scope. So we're going to actually need 3 more jars. So really quickly, I'm just going to copy this 3 times. Okay. So the first one we need belongs to the group ID of info.cooks, and it's called cucumber-java. The version we're going to use is 1.1.2, and the scope is going to be within the test. We're going to do the same thing for cucumber pico container. Same version. And finally, we're also going to need cucumber's take on JUnit. Right, so now we have a JUnit jar that we'll be using, and 3 cucumber jars. The first containing the Java needed, the second containing various things which effectively pulls in a lot of dependencies for us, and the final one is the JUnit API methods needed to run cucumber as a JUnit. So here's a neat trick I learned earlier. If you press Ctrl-Shift-L, it brings up a list of shortcuts, which I actually found out not too long ago. And one of my favorites is the format shortcut. It helps you kind of identify what all the shortcut keys are. So again, as part of my videos, I really like to give away certain things that are not as sparingly used, if you like. But anyway, the format is one of my favorites. Anyway, Ctrl-Shift-F, click that, and it really nicely formats any open window you have. So let's save that. Now, if we open up our Maven dependencies, what you should now notice is it's actually pulled in all of these jars for us. So I assume that you may have seen the very first cucumber video in which I manually look for jars. If we use a build tool such as this Maven, it does everything for us. So if I were to change the version here, it would go off, find the version, and pull it in and get rid of this one. It really helps to really shop for jars without having to physically go and download them from anywhere. It's a really convenient way of managing various things for us. Anyway, so that's effectively the jar setup. The next thing we need to do is just give this a go. So the first thing we're going to do is just making sure we haven't broken anything. If you right click on your project and then go to run as and just run Maven test, what should happen is it will try and find any tests and run them. Naturally, we don't have any tests. So what's happened is it's tried to run this app test. I'll get to that in a second. But more importantly, it's a real success. So we know our Maven framework so far has no errors in it. This is what we were trying to drive towards for the moment. Now let's see this app test. So again, when you create a project, it by default creates Maven creates these apps that we don't actually want. So just go ahead and get rid of them. So just highlight them and just delete them. The next thing we want to do is actually write a feature file and see if we can run that as well. So to write a feature file, what we do is we should typically write our feature files under a brand new directory. The reason we want to do this is so that we want to actually keep our tests different to our resources, and we'll treat our feature file as a resource. The reason why is because that's what it is. A feature file isn't necessarily a test, and it also isn't necessarily part of your main code. It's almost an abstract English version of your test written on a high level. So it just makes logical sense to have all feature files under a resource directory. So to do this, we're just going to right click on our project, go to new, and just add in a source folder. And we're going to put it under the source test / resource. Okay. Now we're going to right click on this and go new file. And we're going to create a brand new feature file. So I'm just going to call this a my feature.feature. And this creates a brand new feature file. So again, if you create this feature file and you don't see the icon in this kind of limeish greenish icon, that's probably because you don't have the cucumber plugin. If you have a look at my first video, that will explain in detail how to get this particular plugin. So once you have this plugin, and note, you don't have to have the plugin to run feature files, but having the plugin does help a lot. What we're going to do is we're just going to write a really basic feature. So we're going to say feature, this is my dummy feature file. Scenario, this is my first dummy scenario. Given, this is my first dummy given step, and we're going to do the same thing for the when and then as well. So let's use that shortcut. It was Ctrl-Shift-F for auto format. There you go. Now again, before I go any forward, a lot of people might say, why are you just kind of using a really rudimentary version of steps, why don't you do something more practical and useful? The reason I'm not doing anything too in-depth with this feature scenario is because I've covered all of that as part of my previous video. This video, I just want to get this proof of concept up and running, and I don't want to kind of repeat myself. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're just going to save that. Now, since we pulled in all the jars, if we now try and just run this, this should run without any problems in that, well, as you can see here, it's actually run the feature file, which means our dependencies are working, but naturally it's saying can't find the necessary steps. So we're just going to copy these steps really quickly, and we're going to create a step file, and we are going to create a test file under the source Java, the source test Java directory, in particular under our package. So we just go new. Let me show that again. So if you go right click on the package name under the source test Java directory, and then go to new class, and let's give this a name. So let's just call this steps, and we copy our steps here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to do some system out prints. And I'm just going to copy this for the others as well. And I'm just going to say executed the first given step, executed the first when step, and finally executed the first then step. Actually, no, let's not make this confusing. Let's call this the second, and let's call this the third. We're going to auto import all the necessary libraries, so it's a Ctrl-Shift-O for auto import for all libraries. And the reason why we have these red lines is because the step names are exactly the same. Yes, they are. So we'll just change it here as well. Second, third, and do the same on the steps. Right. Now let's save everything and rerun our feature file. Perfect. So we now have feature files which run our step definition. So another way to rephrase that is, so far in our framework, when we run a feature file, they are able to pick up step definitions from our step file. So that's effectively the first milestone done. That's the first part of the framework done. Again, what we're going to do is really quickly just right click on Maven Cucumber, the project title, and just quickly do a run as Maven test. Again, just to make sure it's all working. Good. We've got a build success, and notice that previously where we had app test which ran, this time it didn't run because we've removed it. Right, so far we've proved our feature file runs. Now what we're going to do is, now we're going to actually revisit our runner class, and we're going to write a runner class to prove that our framework also works with our runner class. So to create a runner class, again similarly, you go to your source test Java directory, and under the package name, right click and create a new class. And we're going to call this the runner test. Now it's important that you put in test as part of your class name, and it's also important you put in test as the last word of your class name. I'll get back to that why in a bit, but for the moment notice this is something we well, we don't have to do, but it's good to do. So let's create a class. So in this class, what we're going to do is, again, all of this has been explained, but I'll just glimpse through it. The first thing we're going to do is mark this class with a run with annotation, and pass it the cucumber class. So what this does is effectively marks this class as a JUnit class. Or another way to think of it is, once we've added in this run with annotation, we can now run this particular class as a JUnit test. Why is that important? Well, because JUnit tests gives us outputs in terms of the number of tests that executed, the number of tests that passed, failed, and so on. We're also going to give some options. So it's cucumber.options, and the options we're going to pass in, the first is well, the only for the moment is the features. And what this does is this tells this class when it runs where the features are. So we've already identified this. We're going to put all the well, we have put all our features in the source test resource directory. So to do this, quite simply, just give it the path. Again, we'll use Ctrl-Shift-O to quickly import all the necessary classes. Okay. Now what we're going to do is, again, let's just quickly save this. Now we will right-click on this class, and because we've passed in the cucumber.class, we should now be able to run it as a JUnit. So let's run this and see what happens. And there you go. So what's happened is it's picked up the well, for starters, it's actually run all the steps, which is good. Which this is proof that it picked up the feature file and in turn picked up the necessary steps. So that's the step in the right direction. That's exactly what we're trying to drive towards. And if we then open up our JUnit hierarchy of steps that it ran, we can even see in detail what actually happened. So it ran particular steps. So here we can see that it found a feature file, and in that feature file it found a scenario, and for that scenario it had 3 steps, and it ran all 3 steps. And the fact that our system print lines got printed to the console window is proof that our step definitions executed as part of our feature file, which was picked up by our runner class. So again, this is effectively the second milestone in getting our framework up and running using Maven. Now the final thing we need to do is, and this is where this runner test, the naming convention of test comes in, is effectively, again, right-clicking on the project and running as Maven test. So let me run Maven test, and then I explain why we called our runner class appended with the test name. So let's run it and see what happens. So now if you have a look, when we called our class runner.test, because we called it test, it was picked up as part of Maven test task. If we hadn't called it test, this runner test class would not have been picked up. And again, proof in the pudding in that, again, we can see that our steps actually executed. But ultimately our build failed. Our build succeeded, which is what we're trying to drive towards. So now we have a fully functioning framework that helps us do various things. On the first, if we have a look at our POM, so the first thing it does is it helps us manage our dependencies very easily. It helps us to run our test class either independently via right-clicking on it directly and running as JUnit test, or via right-clicking on the project and running as a Maven test. We also have the ability to directly run a feature file, and when running a feature file, our steps are picked up. So we now have, although a very basic but a very powerful framework, which allows us to run both our feature files independently and our runner class independently, or the whole thing in one go via Maven's test command. And that's it for this video, folks. If you enjoy my video and find they bring some new knowledge or insight into writing cucumber tests, then please subscribe and rate. If you have any questions or video suggestions, then please leave a comment below. Many thanks for watching. Until next time, ciao.